Hello everyone, back again for part 3 of the bauble experience. Before I get on to it, as I explained to you in the previous video, my 11/0 coloured seed beads, these little ones here, are not actually true to the 11/0 size. So as a little addition to people that aren't experienced beaders, I would suggest that you use either Miyuki or Toho round seed beads size 11 for this project to get the desired effect. I've had to do quite a bit of alteration on where I left the bauble in the last tutorial, primarily because I was not then in a position to be able to go through what I needed to go through to complete the tutorial for you. So what I'd like to do at this juncture is introduce a finished bauble already, which is this beauty, and it really is stunning. What I've used here is antique gold, rose gold in the centre, and black and gold seed beads, but you can see it is very, very different in the way the centerpiece here is actually in the center of the bauble, whereas on the one I'm working on now they are very much lower down, and that is strictly due to the 11/0 seed beads in the main color being untrue to size. So I wanted to show you how it should look. I'll just widen out a bit, whoops, sorry, so that you can see this when it's finished. And this is the total effect of what I'm doing the tutorial on. Now what I'm showing and going to finish with you is the same in principle, if you bear in mind the key issues about stretching your beads from one Super Duo drop to the other. And as I've said to you, dependent on the beads that you're using, it is adaptable, because what you would do is make sure that the drop between each of the Super Duo in the first instant is not too loose, and then you can reduce your bead sizes accordingly to finish off the whole bauble as it stands. So I'll go back to the original that I'm working on. If you bear that in mind when you come to do the project yourself and you don't use a good quality or a true sized seed bead, you don't have to let that stop you making the bauble. So I'm going to go back now. I'll zoom back in, back to, if you recall, where I left you last time, which was having made these lovely little drops with the Super Duo beads. Now what I've done for the sake of the video is moved things along a little bit, so I've only actually got 2 more to do so that you can see how it all comes together. So I'm going to count up my main seed beads here, and I'm actually doing 7 on either side of the contrast bead. But as I've already explained, if you use a good seed bead, it should come down from 10 to 8 to 6 and then to 4 again on the base of your bauble. So I'll say that again. Your first loop in is 10, then 8, then 6, and then 4 to make sure that they fit on your bauble properly. So I'm picking up my wayward beads now, and at the very last, when you've got those amount of beads on that you need, you pick up 3 of your contrasting colour. So you've got that on the needle. If I can get it to focus. Then you go through the base hole of the Super Duo, which, as you recall, didn't have any use as we finished the other part of the tutorial. You then thread through the eye of the Super Duo, pick up 2 more of the contrasting seed beads, and you go back through the first of the seed bead, if I show you here, and as you pull it together, so you get the match for the top of the pattern as well. So you've got that lovely little bit of casing either side of the Super Duo, which actually makes them pop on the bauble. So I'll go on to do the next one. I'm a bit wary of giving you counts now, as I say, because these beads are not true, and had I realised that at the beginning I would have done things in different colours to go through it all properly with you, but it is ultimately manageable if your beads aren't true and you don't want to go out and buy any more. You can just make these minor adjustments. The only rule of thumb that stands firm is the fact that in amongst the layers that you're putting onto your bauble, there shouldn't be any visible empty thread that would look unsightly. It would look very unsightly. So there's my colour and my contrast. And then I'm going to pick up my 3 contrasting beads at the end, go through that last Super Duo like so, pull the thread tight, or as tight as it can be, till it meets up with the beads on the Super Duo aperture. 2 more seed beads, back down through the first of the seed beads on the other side, and then gently pull it all together, and there is another loop. Now what I have to do, obviously, to meet the other side of the to make the connection here between the Super Duo drops, is to do another count of the main colour seed bead, a contrasting bead, the same amount on the other side, now I've got my 3 seed beads on this side, so we're going to join up by picking up only 2 of the silver beads on at this point, which we then take through the hole of the Super Duo, which lines them up beautifully. And then we need to do a little bit of building to bring it all together. You go through the first of the contrasting beads there, and then come back, no sorry, take that out. Right, so I've come through on both sides. The idea now is to join up the smaller beads, so I'm going to go down through those 2, whoops, like so, down through those 2, and it just adds a bit of strengthening to this part, and around again. And then I'm going to, slipping around, 2 seconds. Check tension again. It's all about, at this stage, getting that tension right and making sure that you haven't got any big gaps in your thread, or indeed in the, sorry, I'm trying to find my way back through the beads to tighten this up again. It's gone a bit slack. Alright, that's about as good as I can get it, but you end up coming out through two so that your single seed bead is proud and acting like a closure for that loop. Then follow the bead path along till you come to the next coloured bead, and we now have to do a reduced bead thread because we're now bringing this in to fit on the base of the bauble. So in the original pattern at this stage you've done 10, you would then do 8. Just each time you come to your silver bead, it's 8 seed beads either side, the contrast bead and another 8 beads, and on to the next bead as you did in the beginning of the bauble. And I obviously can't do that because these beads are really not very good. So what I'm going to do is just continue in the same way, but I won't use the same amount of beads, because if I do, it's not going to sit right on this particular bauble. That's 4. When you finally get to 4 beads either side of your contrast bead, that is when you know you can start working on the beaded dangle that sets off the whole bauble. I'm just sorry I can't be a little bit clearer on this because it's I have to take into account the beads that I'm using, but don't let it stop you trying the pattern, because it's very forgiving. It actually does show you in no uncertain terms when you get to this stage whether you've got enough beads on or too many beads on, because it just doesn't sit next to the bauble. And I hope that makes sense to beginning beaders. I think an experienced beader wouldn't have any problems, but you can see as I'm pulling together, so the beaded work is, the beaded sleeve is sitting better on the bauble, and this is what you achieve with the right true sized seed beads. 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 1, 2, 3 and 4, and over to the next contrasting bead on the previous rope, and we pull, and again 4 and 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, and across to the contrast bead. This is so shiny now, I don't know how much of it is showing well on the video, but I have to pray that you're seeing what I'm talking about. Now I've got a gap there, not a lot I can do about it at this point except to try and keep the tension in such a way that it isn't too obvious. 3, 4 and 1. 2, 3 and 4, and that one will go across to the contrasting bead. And then if you look at the base there, you can see where the next one begins and finishes. So I'll do that one, and that ultimately is what you want around your bauble once you've finished. It needs to sit snugly and comfortably and just not only hug the top of the bauble but also the base of the bauble, so it looks as though it belongs. And it's also pertinent at this point to say that this is not a transferable pattern. You actually cannot change the bauble. Some sleeves come off, this one doesn't, because it really is fitted. Now if I show you there, that is the sum total of the sleeve on the beaded bauble, and here it highlights, if I show you by contrast, because of the difference in the bead sizes, where the actual dangle is on both of the beads, and the green one is significantly lower than the bauble that was made in true 11/0 seed beads. However, not to be daunted, at this point, if you count from where your thread comes out, there should be 13 of your contrasting beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13. And those beads represent now the dangles as they are fitted to the bauble. Now at this point I am exiting a contrasting bead, and I am planning here, just for the sake of a little bit of extra security, to do a half hitch knot. Now what I've done is passed my thread underneath the beads, as you can see. I've got a loop which I've now passed my needle through, and very, very slowly you pull your thread together until it snicks next to the bead, and that then will prevent this from coming loose or coming undone. The next thing we do is pass across to the contrast bead again, and now we start the dangly bit. So I'm going to pick up 2 of the silver contrasting beads. I'll move these out of the way because we don't need too many of them now, and we're going to introduce some more beads. So what I've got here are some lovely green crystals that are AB, so they fit in with the colours that are already within the beads that I've used. And you do need a good few of them because each dangle takes 3 beads. I will have a couple of the green beads. Where am I gone? Hold on a moment, let's see if I can, that's better. I will use a few of the green beads, but it won't be as many. And I've also now got some bugle beads, twisted bugle beads, and these are 5-inch. So if I widen out a tad so that you can see, now you've got your silver bead in situ, which is your contrast bead. You've picked up 2 more of your contrast beads, and what you do then is pick up 2 green, or your main 2 of your main colour, and 1 of the crystals. No, sorry. You've picked up your 2 crystal, or your contrasting colours. You've picked up your 2 contrasting colours. You then pick up 1 of your crystals and let it drop up to the top of the bead like so. You then pick up another 2 crystals and 2 of your contrast, a bugle bead like so, and let that all run up to the top of your work. So there you have 2 contrast, 1 crystal, 2 contrast, 2 main and a bugle. Then we pick up a main, a contrast, and a main, and another bugle bead. And that is how that looks. Then we want 2 more of your main, a crystal, no, sorry, tired now. Okay, so you've got that, so you want 2 of the main colour, two of the contrasting colour. This is just to make the beads pop really. And your crystal again, which fits on to the bauble. Oh, I'll try and bring you in so you can see that together when it settles. And then we want 2 of the silver, 2 of the main, no, sorry, 2 of the silver, a bugle, a main, a contrast, a main, and another bugle, these are just glass bugles. They're not expensive at all and readily available on eBay or your local bead shop and places of that nature. So that's how that looks. And then for your third bead, you're going to pick up 2 more of the contrast, your crystal bead, and this time we want 3 of the contrasting beads. And with these 3 beads you thread them down, but you don't take them back up to the crystal immediately. You just thread that back up through everything that you have on the thread, very, very gently, because bugle beads do have very sharp edges and they will cut through your thread if you're not careful. And you go up through again. I'm just doing a little bit at a time, as you can see, hopefully. Okay, and I'm going to go right up again and through that crystal at the top there, all the way through. You need a size 12 beading needle just to keep it all together, so you can see how now that is attached to the bauble. I'll bring it over here like so, and then you pick up another 2 of the silver seed beads or contrasting beads, and you stitch back through. I'll let it focus, please. So I've come out here, through the top of the crystal bead. Here's my thread. I've put on 2 more of the contrast beads, and I am going back through in the opposite direction and making my way, oh, get it the right way, making my way toward the next contrast bead. So up through the seed beads in the other direction, that was already there, and then I'm going across and through the next contrasting bead, and there is your first dingle dangle on the base of your bauble. To get, again, I'll widen out because it's not really showing and the light's changed again. If you pull that quite tightly, it just sits there beautifully and quite naturally. Don't pull the thread in the dangle too tightly, because what will happen if you do is it will buckle the flow of the beads and they'll look as though they're not a bit fluid, that they are too taut, and you want that fluidity in your dangle to make it look extra pretty. So when you get to that next contrast bead, it's to do exactly the same thing again. So it's 2 of your contrast, a crystal, 2 more of the contrast, 2 of your main, and a bugle bead, and then a main, a contrast, and a main, and another bugle bead. You're just literally following what you put into your first bugle. That's 2, then I want 2 of the main, two of the contrast, way over there, another crystal, two of the contrast, a bugle, a main, a contrast, and a main. So it's all catching up quite beautifully. And another bugle. Two of the contrast. Another crystal. These are 4 by 6, I believe, but anything you have in your stash will do. Pearls, whatever pretty beads that contrast and coordinate with what you've already got on your bauble or what you're planning to use, works beautifully. 3 more of your contrast, and then take those down toward that last crystal, but ignore them, and go up through everything else that is on your thread. Again, bearing in mind that bugle beads can be sharp and they like to nibble through unsuspecting thread. And when you pull this properly at the bottom, you get this lovely Picot effect. If I go in again, whoops, this lovely Picot effect that just finishes off the bauble. I'll go back out. Take you back up to that crystal again, right to the very top crystal, and through the bead, ignoring the contrasting beads that you have there. Keep that tension good. Pick up 2 more of the contrasting beads and go through the bead within that round from the other direction and take it up and through to the very next of your contrasting beads. And by the time you've gone all the way around and untangled everything and kept everything where it needs to be, you will end up with 13 dangles. Now if you're if you're superstitious, then obviously you can add another one somewhere, or just keep it to the 12, or miss out the beads in the small area and just go for the beads in the big area to reduce that number 13 quite significantly. When you've gone all the way around and put your beautiful dangles on each of the beads that you want to use, you follow your bead thread, you make as many half hitch knots as you need to feel that you have secured your beadwork fully, and then you snip off that thread. And all I do to make the handle, or the bit to hang on your tree or on a display, is I make 5 of the main colour beads, 1 of the contrast, and I've done that, hold on and I'll tell you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I've got 15 contrasting beads there with 5 beads in between, and you just start off as you did in the beginning. You get those beads onto your thread, stitch through them all again, obviously including the neck of the bauble on your second round, and that allows you to have a lovely movable but beaded bangle that will act as a hanger for the bauble. So I hope this has been straightforward for you. I hope you've enjoyed the process. It is a long one, and if you want to see more of these beads up close, I am putting them on my little bead shop on Facebook, which I'll leave a link to on the bottom of this video. Do go along and have a look. I don't charge a lot for my beaded baubles. They're actually £10–15 less than you would pay if you were in a craft fair or something of that nature, but just by virtue of the work that's involved, you know, you need to get a little something back, and of course feed your beady habit. But they make fabulous gifts, fabulous special things. You can really dress them up or dress them down with bows and all that kind of thing, but once you've got the basic netting and central piece here, the world is your oyster, because you can put it on anything you'd care to. So thank you very much for joining me on this process, and I hope you go on to give it a go. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to leave them underneath the video here, and I will get back to you just as soon as I can. The thread I've used for this is 4 braid from Japan, and I think there was a ridiculous amount on it. If I put the website there, and it is exactly the same as Fireline. The only thing with the dark colours like this is you do end up with a little bit of the coating of the thread on your fingers, but that's not a bad thing. So thank you once again everyone, take care, bye bye for now.